Next up, we've got K.Christie. Most of you probably would have seen him around. Been doing it for a while. Started off killing rabbits on the rabbit board. 10,000 plus in his first year, so he's killed a few rabbits and he's been doing it well for quite some time. I'll leave it up to him.
Thanks for that, Daniel. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ko K.Christie toko ingoa. Hi, I'm K.Christie. Thanks, Daniel. Making me feel quite old. I've waited a little bit of time to give this presentation because you don't want to blow your trumpet too quickly when it comes to the word eradication. And then there's this expression, is there technical eradication or is there actual eradication? So I'm going to talk about the Cape Sanctuary project that my company, EcoEffects, and I'm now part of the Rentokil group, undertook on the Cape Sanctuary. Is Chris Wootton in the room? Okay, Chris, how are you? Chris has been involved with this, and I think you have too. The gentleman in the Canadian T-shirt. Right. Cape Kidnappers is a pretty unique site. If you haven't been there, go there. There's not many places where there's a mainland gannet colony in New Zealand that you can go to. Some visionary people with quite a lot of money had an idea to put a nearly 11-kilometre fence across the Cape quite a few years ago and capture within that area 2,500 hectares of mostly farmland and some regenerating land. And so there's that a nationally significant gannet colony. And then the Robinsons built a 5-star golf course and lodge in the area. And they set about getting rid of rabbits, which were a major problem in the area. And they undertook rabbit control and predator trapping for a 10-year period. They really dabbled around the edges. They had an extensive network of traps, but they dabbled around the edges with the rabbit control. So in 2013, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council got involved, and we ended up being contracted to go in and undertake some work for them on the Cape. So there's the fence there. It's a significant undertaking, that fence, and this was a nearly 1,000-hectare aerial operation. And in the middle of it, we were going to use standard practice as per the national guidelines, and then Dave Latham from Landcare got in the middle of the process, and so we ended up having this trial block where we were using strip sowing. One of the managers was opposed to the use of 1080, so we had to use Pindone, and we got a 96.3% reduction in the 1080 block, and pretty much you'd have to say that was a failure in the Pindone block at that time. That's our carrot cutting gear. That carrot cutting gear is probably cut, I don't know, upwards of probably pushing 10,000 tonne of carrot. But we put them in the shed and thought we'd never get them out again, ever. And then in 2013 we did. The key drivers for rabbit eradication, you kind of well, what's that got to do with a sanctuary? But they ended up with untrappable cats. That was the problem. They didn't have to go far for a food source, and they were introducing all these species like North Island kiwi, little spotted kiwi, takahe petrels were coming back, kaka, and pātiki, kakariki, right throughout the Cape area. The farming was no longer viable. 1 million, they had a goal to plant 1 million trees, and they couldn't do it. And a lot of waihi tapu sites were getting dug out by rabbits, and bones were coming out, and Ngāti Kahungunu were getting fairly upset about that. And then there was major erosion and soil loss. Estimated at 60 to 80,000 rabbits in this area. So Jake Bocock from Rural Pest Services is contracted to do the counting, so he counted 2,100 rabbits on the line, and much of the area was level 8 on the modified McLean scale, and again the major cat problem. So cats were targeting other species as a secondary food source. So I've used to work in the Mackenzie country on the Pukaki Pest Destruction Board, and I used to see stuff like that all the time, but that's actually on Cape Kidnappers, and there's nothing holding the soil up there, and that was a lot over a lot of the Cape. We did a rhodamine trial, which was a failure. I don't know if you're aware, but it's a fluorescing dye, and you really need a 90% acceptance in the population. And we did three or four feeds, but put simply, there were too many rabbits getting access to the bait, and so some rabbits weren't. So we actually hit a 85%, and a lot of money at stake. They made a decision that they were going to go ahead anyway. It was the right decision. So the key, why eradication? Well, no government departments except for a tiny little bit of dockland, tiny bit of dockland. 3 committed landowners. No re-invasion. The fence is across, it's got leaky ends at each end of the coast, but basically no re-invasion. What they'd done previously just hadn't worked. And they'd spent a lot of money, like the Hawke's Bay Regional Council and the local the landowners had spent a lot of money getting nowhere. And on Cape Kidnapper Station, 400 sheep and 40 cattle is barely viable on 1,500 hectares. So they just, and again, the feral cat thing. And they really wanted to plant the whole of the Cape, and they just couldn't do it. Rabbits were eating brand new seedlings, but they were ring-barking existing trees and killing them at the same time. 6 months of operational planning, big decision by those people given they were funding it privately, and it was delivered in the non-breeding season because home ranges widen up. And I talked about the rhodamine trial, and we used NPCA Bionet best practice guidelines of high density 40 a hectare and down to 20. So it's unheard of in our industry, but we had a 7-day planning between each phase. So we put the bait out, 7 days later we did a second phase, and 7 days later we did a third phase. And we were using 2 helicopters with a 120 metre swath, which I'll talk about in a minute, and we were doing double passes on the heavy areas. There's quite a bit of complexity to this, even though it was 3 private landowners. Clifton Beach was there. People walk down it every day, take their dogs down it every day. Ocean Beach, people will go fishing on it every day, drive their vehicles up it every day, put boats in, there's some places where you can put boats up by Black Reef and places like that. And we've got some photos coming up. But trickle feed right around the edges, and we're talking about multiple trickle feeds. When I talk about trickle feed, it's not spread through a spinner. It's quite accurately placed, and it had to be. So that's we allowed 2 days on site. Basically, it was a 3-day turnaround. We had 12 staff from EcoFX and another 8 in support from the helicopter companies. And Rural Pest Services were there helping us as well. So big job, 120 tonne of carrots. So why we had to have 6 months planning is we had to go to the grower and go, hey, you need to start growing this stuff now because we need 360 tonne of carrot. That's, to use somebody else's word, a shit ton of carrot. And there's not many people in New Zealand who use carrot to that level. We had a digger on the site, and then we've got our highly modified gear that we'd put in the shed and thought we'd never use again. The point of the fence, the fence is exactly where the green and the yellow line goes. And the green area there's the 20k, that's a 30k block, and that's a 40k block. 40 kgs a hectare. It's a lot of carrot. I'll show you what that looks like in the next slide. So this is actually Ocean Beach, but we had kind of high public usage and lots of people looking at us. So we had to go the mile and put berg signs out so that people couldn't get past them accidentally. And so this is one on Ocean Beach, and there's the Cape Sanctuary in the background. And we had to work with the lodge. We had to shut down probably about a $20,000 a day operation while it was happening for 3 weeks. The golf course, I think it's $500 to do a round on the golf course, that got shut down. and we had to be there during the gannet non-breeding season. We couldn't have the gannets there, and we actually say everybody was looking at us, even though we were behind a fence. It's a big exercise. Not many of you in the room would have ever done carrot, but it's basically our system's pretty highly automated, and as you can see here, that's 120 tonne of carrot in 1 tonne bags. And we've got a continuous flow processing system, and so the machine gets turned on and never gets turned off. We get high accuracy in the bait and in toxic loadings by doing that. And that's the airstrip with the Iroquois parked on it, and we're up at the top end of the airstrip. We did look, it's unheard of, but we did a pre-feed on the 10th of June. We were back again doing a second pre-feed on the 17th of June, and we were back 7 days later doing the toxic phase. The weather just lined up perfectly. It was one of those unheard of things. The high density area, basically we put the carrot out, and 4 hours later it wasn't there. And we went, F, what do we do now? So we went, and a lot of the 30 kg areas we realised we didn't have enough bait out there. So we had to lift the rate to 45, which sounds even higher, and then we had to increase the areas that we had previously been 30 kgs. And we're doing quality control so when you cut carrot bait, you're screening it, and you have a chaff rating so you don't get non-targets. And the target for chaff as small particles is 1.5. We were sitting at 0.13, 1.5 against that. And this is a really important bit. They were really worried about predator or prey switching for the feral cats. They were going, well, when all the rabbits are dead, they're going to start eating everything that we're trying to protect. So they did a rapid research project through MPI and Aurelian and lifted the toxic loading to 6%, or 0.06%, 3 times the toxic loading, specifically to target cats. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And that was a big point of difference. So big setup at night, started pretty much on site at 5 in the morning, and there's reasons for that. And that's our automated setup, and then we're flying an Iroquois and a B3, which is lifting off basically 1.2 and 0.8, so 2 tonne a cycle. That's what 45 kgs of hectare of carrot looks like. That's at the gannet colony, and the gannets are all gone, but every one of those orange dots is a piece of carrot, so it's carpeted. And at 40 kgs a hectare, it was disappearing, so that was an indication. This is down on an ocean beach, and all those black dots are actually green carrot baits. So everywhere you can see, and that's 45 kgs a hectare. And they were right down to the ocean's edge. I'll go through this quite quickly, but you can see 3 maps there. The one on the left is what we proposed, or what we did the first pre-feed. The light blue area was a 30 kg a hectare block, and the purples were 20s. That changed by the second feed when we upped those rates. And the one on the right is the flight lines, and basically it's nearly fully coloured in because everything's a double pass. So those landowners who agreed to a crapload more money that was a big ask for them, because we were asking them to come up with another, I don't know, we'll call it $50,000 or $100,000 on the day, and they had to say yes or no, and they didn't have time to muck around. So we cut out of the 320, we cut 266 tonne of bait of cut carrot bait. We were doing 7.2 an hour, but the helicopters were putting out 12 tonne an hour. So hence the reason we were starting at 5 in the morning. We got that highly modified carrot cutting equipment, and we had a lot of people on site. So there was 20 people on site at any time, and we had a camper van as a command centre, which we used for processing data, and we had a dedicated toxin mixing and sampling area, and then we had a full decon in case there was an accident, like a full HES shower on site. So pre-operation, Jake Bocock had done the night counting, 2,100 rabbits on the line. Post, in that same area, nothing. Rabbits were dying. The helicopter pilots were flying up one line, coming back, and the rabbits were dying underneath them. They'd just gone past them like 15 minutes before. We went and had a look, and we didn't see a live rabbit. We spent probably 40 minutes in a helicopter the next day looking for rabbits, and we didn't see any. Right, there were just thousands and thousands of dead rabbits. The feral cat thing was a success. 84% mortality of the tracked cats, and for some reason the remaining ones just completely died out in the next 3 to 4 months. So there was a massive drop-off in the cat numbers. Since then, Lenny Sparks and others, and Chris to my left here, were involved in. He was there for about the first year, doing some follow-up monitoring. And what happened is we weren't allowed to treat the Cape. The MOH, the Medical Officer of Health, wouldn't let us do it. So we had to leave that, and we were pushing the envelope right to the edge of the bluffs, these bluffs. And then Ocean Beach, there's kind of like a Mulia Becker mat that's about 1.5 metres high, and the bait was getting hung up in those areas, and so rabbits weren't getting access to it. It wasn't getting to the ground, and they were living underneath it. So there was follow-up shooting and drone shooting, and then Jake did the counts in 22 and 23, and there were no rabbits seen through that 21-kilometre track. So the areas that were left were these areas. So these areas just didn't get bait on them, and rabbits were scampering down the cliffs and then coming up. 1 minute? Okay. So I've gone through that. I've got a minute left. The outcomes are there's 1,000 North Island kiwi on there, 200 spotted kiwi, kakariki all over the block. There's actually 1.5 million trees planted there now. Takahe are going to be released over the whole Cape. Petrels are living in rabbit burrows, kiwi are living in rabbit burrows, and there's been a major drop-off in mustelid activity outside the fence. And farming is now a full viable enterprise. All of those values that they wanted to protect are now being protected, and now rabbits are they're down to less than a handful. What made it work was that the owners had the strategic vision. There were adequate resources. We put a lot of resources into this. There was technical expertise. Not many people could do this in New Zealand. A handful of people are really quite capable of doing a carrot operation of this scale. Precision execution, that money from stakeholder commitment, and adaptive management with the lift to the 0.06, and innovation. So, the Robertson, Lowe and Hanson families really funded this. This was an expensive project, but world class, and Rachel Ward was involved in that research. Heli Resources did the aerobating, Rural Pest Services, Aurelian, and Landcare were involved in doing the trial work. There's probably this many rabbits left there, and there's a leaky fence. So I'd say it's a technical eradication. Cheers, guys. Thanks.